Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Morning.
Good.
Good.
What's that? Who came in on the iPhone?
It was Hannah. I don't know if my name came on with it.
No, it just says iPhone.
Might be me.
Who's that, Nick?
That's Brendan Sprouse.
Oh, Brendan. Okay. Yeah, because I don't see your name showing up either as on the list of participants.
It must be me.
Just waiting for everybody to join. Hey, Nick,
Yeah.
got my email about how to just go ahead and email the registrar about adding that extra course.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay.
Door, please.
Hi, Sophia.
Hello.
See if we got anybody else coming in so far. Austin, are you there? I haven't seen your name yet. Okay. Jared, are you there? No. Olivia Carpenter?
I'm here.
Okay. Caitlin Crow?
I'm here.
Okay. Isaac, I thought I saw your name.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okie dokie. Morgan Dobbs? Sophia, I saw you face to face. Morgan Graham?
I'm here.
Okay. Lacey, I thought I saw your name. You're here, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Aubrey?
I'm here.
Hannah, I spoke to you. Caitlin Johnston, are you here? Nick? No, you're there. Bella, I saw your name, I think. Dominic, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah, I see your name now. Scotty, I thought I saw you joining. You here now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Blake, are you here? Okay, Emma, I saw you. Isaiah, are you here?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Brendan Nichols? Anita? There's Austin.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Leslie, I saw you, right? Tia, I saw you. Serena Smith, I saw you. Brendan, we talked. And let's see who else I have here. Daphne, you're there. Didn't I see your name?
Yeah, I'm here.
Audrey, I saw you. Caitlin Wallace, I saw you. And Sydney, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. And Austin, you're with us now?
Yeah, I'm here.
And Jared, you're with us too now?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Okay, and somebody else joined the iPhone. Who was that?
That's Brendan. I was here. I just couldn't unmute it the first time.
Okay. All right. Brendan Sprout. All righty, Brendan. Okay. So if anybody gets a text or notices somebody waiting to get in, let me know, okay? All right. So first, your quiz is on Friday. It'll be open from 8 to 11:55. It'll cover chapters 8 and 9. Tomorrow at noon, I'm going to do a question and answer Zoom meeting. I think I've already sent out the link for that. That's discretionary. You can attend if you want, but you don't have to. That's just for people to ask questions before the quiz. And this morning, I also posted the meeting from last Wednesday, and the meeting from before that is also posted on my YouTube channel. So you can access those if you want to revisit or view for the first time those class sessions where I talked about those chapters. So not finished with the quiz, but it's probably going to be around 20, as I said in my announcement, 16 to 20 multiple choice questions, somewhere in that neighborhood, and it'll be either 50 minutes or a little over 60 minutes, except for those who have accommodations. So any questions about any of that? Great. Okay, so I am going to screen share with you the PowerPoint from chapter 10. And I also want to, I think I'm going to do that. Hold on. And I'm going to talk about the videos because those are pretty important for this chapter. So, can everybody see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't? Did somebody say they don't see it? Okay. So, this chapter actually covers 3 different disability categories. You may not remember from real early on in the course, there are 13 categories of disability under IDEA. And this covers 3 of them because they're all very, once again, low incidence disabilities for the most part. So the 3 categories are other health impairments, orthopedic impairments, and traumatic brain injury. So I'm actually going to start with orthopedic impairments. Those usually have to do with the kinds of things exercise physiologists are really interested in, which is the musculoskeletal system, things that affect your bones and your skeleton and your gross motor skills in particular. The second category is other health impairments, and that refers to conditions like can be asthma, could be type 1 diabetes, it could be cystic fibrosis, anything that really kind of just saps a person's strength and vitality. Now, these two categories are not exclusive. In other words, you could have cerebral palsy, which affects you from an orthopedic point, but it also could affect you from a health impairing point. Same way with muscular dystrophy. Both of those are just two examples of conditions that actually affect both the muscular skeletal system as well as just your overall health, different organs and body systems. The last category, which can also tie into orthopedic and health impairments, are traumatic brain injuries. So a traumatic brain injury, there are two types. They're open, which means your skull has literally been opened up. It's something has fractured your skull. Or closed head injuries, which does not involve your skull being opened. And most common among those, of course, are concussions, usually related to sports or falls or automobile accidents. So those are the three different categories. And again, they're not always exclusive. People can have disabilities that really would fall into any or all three of those categories. So I'm going to stop that share for a second, and I'm going to bring up Sakai here on the resources page, and this is the chapter 10. So can everybody see the Sakai page now?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
obviously you want to watch, by the way, these are generally a little bit longer videos. They're running probably anywhere from 6 or 7 up to 15 or 20 minutes. So the two for TBI are, of course, understanding TBI. And that would be the first one I would watch for TBI. That explains closed and head injuries, and it shows really probably more adolescents and adults and some of the impact and how they treat traumatic brain injuries. The second is the dangers of concussions. And that is actually very personal to me. The person that's the focus of this, it was a sports ESPN E60 segment on their show E60, and Pat Grange is the name of the young man, and I knew him growing up, and his parents, Mike and Michelle, are still very good friends of mine. I just saw them in January when I was out in New Mexico, so that has a very personal touch for me. And it does talk a lot about concussions and what concussions can do, but not from football, interestingly enough. Sports, but not football sports. Now, when we get to the orthopedic impairments, the two best to look at are spina bifida, and it will explain what spina bifida is, and cerebral palsy. Okay. And then I would say for health impairing conditions, although muscular dystrophy is listed under OI on that first slide, it's a health impairing condition. So living with Duchenne muscular dystrophy and living with cystic fibrosis. So I'm going to go back now. Any question on those? All righty. I am going to go back to the PowerPoint now. All right, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. So again, here's some examples. The reason that I really want to stress the videos isn't necessarily because those are the only types of health impairing or orthopedic or traumatic brain injury things that can happen to you. There's so many different conditions. It would be crazy for me to expect you to know about all of them. And in fact, quite a few you all covered in your NIH presentations. I know someone did asthma and I don't know about epilepsy, but heart conditions and so on. So there's lots of different conditions. I don't expect you to know all of them, but to be able to name a couple of examples would be important. So 0.1% orthopedic impairments, 0.04% for traumatic brain injury. So we're talking really, really, really small numbers of people. Other health impairments actually is a little bit larger. It approaches 1% of the school age population. The reason for that, and this is important to remember, is ADHD can be classified as a health impairing condition. That's why it's larger than the other categories. It's because of that one thing, ADHD. Okay? So you'll see the videos on all three of these. Cerebral palsy is due to brain damage, usually prior to, during, or immediately after birth. Is the result of cerebral palsy. No cure for it. It's brain damage and there's really nothing that can be done. Spina bifida, the video explains that. It has to do with your vertebrae in your back don't actually close, okay? And it leaves an opening, and then your actual spinal cord, spinal column can become exposed and actually be outside of your backbone, so to speak. And that can cause damage. It can range from no impact to most people that have it more severely. It can affect usually their lower extremities, that they have paralysis in their legs, sometimes affects bowel and bladder, and it can cause intellectual disabilities, but not always. Muscular dystrophy, there is a video in there, all out of Canada. So it's a, what do you call them? Subtitles, because a couple of the families or all the families are from Quebec. So French is their first language. So that's a one that really shows the challenges. And muscular dystrophy almost inevitably leads to early death. Most people with muscular dystrophy die by their 20s or early 30s. Okay, so I was going to put up some videos about epilepsy. And decided not to, because unless I'm really watching them with you and stopping it in class, I mean, I could try to do it here, but the screen sharing would become so complicated. I decided not to do that. The main thing about epilepsy that you need to know is there are different types of seizures. You can see there's 4 listed in those bullet points. The generalized seizure is what most people think of as epilepsy. That's the lose consciousness, convulsions, the shaking, the falling on the floor, and so on, and is the most serious. But there are other types of seizures that are less dramatic, I guess, and I could explain those. Absent seizures, it almost looks like the person is just daydreaming. They just kind of stare off into the distance for a few seconds, and unless you knew you were looking at absent seizures, you might not even notice. And then there's simple and complex partial seizures, which tend to affect only a part of the body or a side of the body. So you might have tremors or some convulsions in your left side or your left arm or something like that. But again, in the other three types, it doesn't necessarily result in loss of consciousness. The generalized seizure does result in loss of consciousness. So maybe I'll go ahead and post those in the next couple of days now that I've had a chance to explain them. And you can get an idea of what they actually look like. Epilepsy is almost always controllable by medication, and it's actually the best way to describe epilepsy is it's like an electrical storm in your brain. Just part of your brain is firing away neurologically, and that's why you get the jerky movements and the convulsions and so on, because your brain is sending a message to your muscles to contract, and your consciousness just shuts down because of this electrical storm in the brain. So, but it can usually be controlled with medication. And typically it's the result of some type of neurological damage. People can have seizures that go away. I had a friend at one point, back in the days of landline telephones, was on the phone during a thunderstorm, and the lightning actually came through the line and knocked him across the room, and he had seizures for a couple of 2 or 3 months. He would have seizures now and then they finally went away, which was fortunate for him. All right, traumatic brain injury. As I mentioned, there's two types. Open, where your skull is actually penetrated and your brain is exposed. That's usually the car accidents, the falls, gunshot wounds, things like that. The closed head injuries, there's no penetration of the skull, but can be very, very serious nonetheless. And those can occur from falls and obviously sports injuries. Also, if you've ever heard of shaken baby syndrome, that's a result of a closed head injury. When someone shakes an infant or a toddler really hard, it can cause brain damage. The reason being that our brain actually floats in fluid inside our skull. And so when your head is moved violently, then your brain can actually slap up or slam up against the inside of your skull and cause damage. So the main thing I really want to stress about brain injuries themselves is that if somebody takes a fall, even though their head might not be cut or anything like that, but they take a serious knock to the head, do not play around with it, because people can have those types of head injuries and they could be hemorrhaging, and they may seem fine for a while, and an hour or two later they're dead. So just because somebody says, oh, I'm fine, doesn't mean they are fine. So just be aware in everyday life that anytime somebody takes a knock to the head, um, it's something to worry about. I took a tumble out jogging about 2 months ago, and I hit my head and I thought I was fine, but by that night I was quite nauseous and had a headache and felt really bad, and that went for a couple of days, and I'm convinced now I probably did have a concussion. So, okay, with all of these, it almost doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it's health impairments, orthopedic impairments, or traumatic brain injuries, in particular TBI. You don't really know how a person's affected just by the condition. You do know with some things like muscular dystrophy and cystic fibrosis, that the condition is going to get worse over time, and it often does lead to early death. But a traumatic brain injury can be from very mild to quite severe. Health impairing conditions. A person could have a type 1 diabetes and be getting along fine, and another person could have more complications. Orthopedic impairments. One person could have cerebral palsy, and you might notice in their speech or a little bit in their coordination, and someone else, like the young man that's in the video, living with cerebral palsy, can be quite profoundly affected physically. So the main thing is you just don't know until you get to know the person. You can't draw conclusions just by knowing what their diagnosis is. The main thing with these students is just giving them those accommodations that they need. Maybe they need more frequent breaks. Maybe they need shorter tests. Maybe they need a scribe. Maybe they need human read aloud for texts or texts on books. The main idea is that many of these students have no intellectual disabilities at all. No learning disabilities, nothing like that. Some do, but many do not. And so they generally are going to be in the regular curriculum. The main thing is just to take care of their physical needs and to just help them learn as much as they can, or hang on to whatever learning they've acquired. Just kind of try to keep them at a plateau. All righty. So some students will have individualized health plans. That generally is not going to apply to general education teachers. That's more that what special educators would do, and or maybe school nurses. Some students will need proper positioning. I can't really show you here, but it's kind of like making sure a person is sitting upright so that their hips and back are at a 90-degree angle, and their knees are down at 90 degrees, and their ankles and feet are at 90 degrees from their shins, that their hands are in a position that they can use them. This is mainly for paralysis and cerebral palsy. And then some students, of course, will need social skills support. Unfortunately, these students do get teased sometimes because of their conditions. They may be isolated because people are just afraid of them or don't understand them. And similarly for families, that it can be very hard. And you'll notice that in the videos, it's great impact on the families when they have these kinds of conditions, particularly those that lead to physical deterioration and early death. It's really very difficult. So one of the things as a general educator or special educator you need to know, or if you're exercise physiology and you're working in hospitals or rehab facilities or helping people at home doing personal training, whatever, is the person's strength and skills can fluctuate. They may do really well, and then a week later they're not doing as well, and then they come back, and then they hit a plateau for a while. And so again, it's just adapting to where the person's at that time. In terms of being a teacher, you got to try to work sometimes with students that miss a lot of school. I mean, if you've got some of these conditions like cystic fibrosis, there's going to be times you're in the hospital. There's just no avoiding it. So sometimes it's just a matter of trying to help students feel welcome and catch them up, or like I said, keep them where they're at. Related services can be very important. So things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, school nurse services, wheelchair, bus transportation. These are all adaptive physical education. All of these are related services that become really important for people in these three categories, much more so than they are for, say, somebody with a specific learning disability. I've mentioned placement can change as needs change. And certainly with technology now, it's a little bit easier to provide homebound instruction. But again, that would be a special ed person that would be doing that. The main thing that I would say to you, and I'm going to stop, any questions? Well, let me stop that and we'll come back here. Oh, there's Morgan Dobbs. How long you been waiting, Morgan? Morgan, you there? She may have gotten out figuring I wasn't going to let her in. You know, the main thing is try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I'll give you a personal experience I had when I was teaching at a high school. And one day the social worker, school district social worker, came down to my room and said, "You used to work in a residential institution, didn't you?" And I said, yeah, I did for like 4 years. And she said, "So you did a lot of help with people with all kinds of needs, right?" And I said, "Oh yeah, toileting, bathing, dressing, feeding, you name it. I've done it." And she said, "Well, I want to ask you a favor. There was a young man who was coming into the high school. He was Native American, and he was coming to this high school because he wanted to take some particular art classes that were not offered at the program he was at. He lived out on a reservation and he had a long commute. He was essentially quadriplegic. He had very little use of hands and legs. He had a motorized wheelchair. And he wanted to be an artist, a painter, and he painted by putting the paint brushes, either held them in his mouth or with a head pointer. And the social worker said he is not going to be allowed to come to this school unless somebody is willing to take him to the toilet. And she said, "Nobody else is willing to do that. Would you do it?" And I said, "Sure. I mean, it's not anything I haven't done before." And so I really felt bad for the student because if you stop and think about it, I didn't have him in any classes. He didn't have any special needs other than his physical impairments. So whenever he needed to use the bathroom, he'd have to come down to my room and tell me, and I'd have to take him to a special bathroom and help him with his toileting and all of that. And I would try to talk to him, but he just wouldn't talk. I think it was just so embarrassing, and he wouldn't even acknowledge me going by in the hall if I said hi to him. I think he was so put out by the fact that he needed that, you know. So the point is, put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I remember talking to a colleague who said, I didn't go to college to take people to the toilet. And I said, well, I didn't either, really. But I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to deny this guy who's trying to learn to paint with paintbrushes in his mouth and head pointer? I mean, are you really going to say, I don't care whether you get that kind of education or not because you need help going to the bathroom, and don't anybody expect me to help with that? To me, that's just not even being human. Not that the person that I knew was an inhumane person, but sometimes these students have needs and issues that have to be dealt with. And like I say, if you put yourself in their shoes, then maybe you get a little more sympathy that, you know, the fact that they drool or they're incontinent or they have an ostomy for their feces or their urine and those kinds of things. No, it's not pleasant, but imagine what it's like for them. Well, okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Any questions from anybody? None? Morgan, are you there? Dobbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long were you waiting to get in?
It's like 10:05.
I'm here.
Okay. Oh boy. All right. Well, I didn't notice, so I'm sorry about that. But this class is being recorded, so I'll be posting it on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to catch up, okay?
Mm.
Did you hear me, Morgan?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll also be doing a study session before the quiz on chapter 10 next week. So, and if you have any questions or you're confused, certainly email me, or we can do a Zoom meeting, not just for Morgan, but for anybody. Okay? Is everybody well?
Yes.
Bella, I saw somebody getting that coronavirus test up the nose, and it did look pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm glad everybody's doing well. Anita, you still in Mexico, or are you back in Italy by now?
I'm still in Mexico. I can't go back to Italy yet.
You can't go back yet. Oh my
No.
goodness.
That's
Oh,
where she's from.
you what?
I can't go back. There are no flights. They
Oh,
close.
no flights yet. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no. It's going to be long.
Yeah. Boy, that's tough. That is really tough.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Well, all right,
I
everybody.
have something.
Yes, Lacey.
I have something that people can watch if they really want to. I had to watch it from one of my other classes, and if anybody has Netflix, they can go on there and watch it. It's a documentary. It's called Crip Camp, and it's all about people with disabilities and stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, I think I have. I don't know that I've seen that one, but I've seen. And by CRIP, it's CRIP, like short for cripple.
Yeah.
Yeah, CRIP Camp. Yeah, I'm aware of these kinds of camps that are for students with these kind of health impairing and orthopedic injuries that really might not fit in so well in a regular camp. And it really gives those kids a chance to have some experiences that they just wouldn't have, because most camps aren't set up to accommodate people with those kinds of issues. So that's a good idea. Netflix Crip Camp, okay? If you send that to me, I'll also make sure it goes out in an announcement, Lacey. Any other questions?
Is there going to be a study guide for chapters 8 and 9?
I sent it out.
Okay.
But the first email that you would have gotten, I said it's attached, but it's not. The second one says, oops.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot to attach it. So it's the one that says oops that has the actual study guide attached to it.
All right.
And
Thank
then
you.
again, tomorrow at noon, I'll be doing a question and answer review for chapters 8 and 9. Quiz on Friday, same format that it's always been. Anything else? Well, we're almost finished. So a couple of more weeks and we'll be done. So everybody hang in there, take care of yourselves, be safe. And I am going to leave the meeting, but I'm going to leave the meeting running. If you all want to talk or amongst yourselves, or some of you want to stay on and talk to each other virtually, that's fine, okay? But I'll be gone. I won't be watching or listening. So long. See you tomorrow if you come to the review